Dr. Jeff talks love. Dr. Jeff talks life. Answers your questions, cuts through the strife. Sex and intimacy, real and true. Evidence-based, made just for you.
Hello, and welcome. Welcome to Dr. Jeff Talks about sex and intimacy, where we explore the science, the psychology, and the lived experience of connection in our relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Alba. Today, you're joining us for episode 70. That's just crazy. Episode 70 is on moving past bad marriage advice, what actually works for couples. Whether you're watching live or whether you're listening to the recording later, every single moment of your amazing life matters, and I count it a true blessing and a gift to have you here present to improve your life. I sincerely thank you for being here, and I just want you to know that you are the reason that this podcast exists. So thank you for being here. We are connected across so many platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn. If you're joining on X, pop over to one of the other platforms, including StreamYard, and you can give us your questions. And if you are a Facebook person, do us a favor, follow us. The more people who follow us, the more we can do on Facebook. We appreciate our followers on all platforms, so thank you. Visit the website. If you haven't already, the website is chock full of every single one of our past episodes. After tonight, there'll be 70. Number 70 will go in there. So you can watch any episode from the past. You can pull up the calendar and see the amazing, awesome guests who are coming on in the next couple weeks. We're booked all the way through July. And we've got all kinds of great people coming on to share their expertise with you. So go to the website. You can take Dr. Jeff where you go. If you're working out, if you are on the road, whatever you're doing, take us with you. We are streaming. We are on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on Spotify. Wherever you are, we are. So if you're working out, you can work out and learn more about sex and intimacy. So please take us with you. As I always do, I'd like to remind you the mission of this podcast is very simple. It is to empower and to enlighten you with the scientific evidence-based information that improves your sexual health, that deepens your loving relationships, so you can live this one miraculous, wholehearted life more fully and with even more love. So today, there's no shortage. If you haven't noticed, there is no shortage of marriage advice out there. Gosh, friends, family, social media, even well-meaning professionals, all offering guidance on what exactly couples should do, right? What should you do? But what happens? What happens when the advice doesn't actually help? Or worse, what if the advice leaves couples feeling more disconnected, even frustrated, or even misunderstood? Well, in today's episode, we're taking a closer look at the gap between common marriage advice that you may hear and what truly works in real relationships. So joining me is Monica Tanner. She is a relationship coach and an educator who helps couples move beyond one-size-fits-all advice and into approaches that are practical, grounded, and effective. Together, we're going to explore how to let go of unhelpful myths or advice and build skills that support deeper communication. You know how we always focus on communication here, more intimacy, and lasting, meaningful connection. So Monica Tanner is a relationship coach certified in both relational life therapy and sex therapy, and the author of the best-selling book, Bad Marriage Advice. And her work is dedicated to helping couples create more connected, intentional partnerships. That's important. With a focus on practical tools and real-life application, Monica guides individuals and couples in moving beyond outdated or ineffective relationship advice towards strategies that foster communication, emotional closeness, and mutual fulfillment. Through her work, Monica emphasizes that strong relationships aren't built on rigid rules, but on understanding, adaptability, and shared growth. She's passionate about helping couples feel more empowered, more aligned, and more deeply connected in their relationship. So I am very excited to welcome my guest, Monica Tanner. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I loved your book, and I am looking forward to you sharing and us chatting about this wonderful book. So let's jump into the presentation.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So, this is our topic. I think it's a really good one. And you dedicated a whole book to it, right? Tell us a little bit about how did the book come about?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you so much for asking. I actually wanted to write a book forever and ever and ever, but I just was like, never, I just didn't have the right just motivation for it until my oldest son, who was 21 at the time, called me and said, "Mom, I met the girl I'm going to marry. I'm going to propose next month." And I was like, oh my gosh, I started to panic. Have I taught him all the things he needs to know to do this? Marriage is no joke. And so I sat down to write him, kind of just a love note from mom to son. And it quickly turned into this book because what I realized was that as soon as he announced he was getting married and they're so young, everyone was going to have advice. And I remember from when my husband and I got married at 22, so I didn't have much of a leg to stand on. When we got married at 22, everybody had advice, and some of that advice turned out to be really, really bad. And so I wanted to save my son and his beautiful wife some of the heartache and anguish that came as we kind of tested all of these pieces of advice. And so you pulled out some really, really good ones, and I'm excited to chat with you about those today.
Okay, so let's jump in. And so basically, tell us a little bit about the book. I kind of put some of the chapters and the myths in there. So tell us about the book.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's if you imagine, there's the note cards that they put out at the bridal showers and everybody writes their best advice. And then people come through the receiving line on on the night of the reception. And everybody has this well-meaning advice. Absolutely wonderful. People that have been married for a long time that are happy, they all have something to say about how to make a marriage work. And for you, Dr. Jeff, congratulations on 40 years, right? My
Yeah.
husband and I just celebrated 24.
Wow.
And, it took us a while to figure out, but some of this advice was like the exact opposite of what we were actually going for in our marriage. And I'm not saying that all of the advice has always been bad. My guess is that, at some point, some of this advice was helpful. But
Mhm.
we expect more right now from modern marriage than we ever have before. We want our partners to be our best friends, our adventure buddies, our longtime lovers, somebody who challenges us, somebody who supports us, somebody who sees us in all the ways. Intimacy has never been more important than it is right now. And so a lot of that advice just falls short, and there are better ways to do it. So in the book, I tell you a piece of bad marriage advice that either I or many of my clients heard growing up or right when they were getting married, right? And then why it's not good advice and how to do it better. And each one of these chapters contains a skill for communicating at a higher level than is required for the kind of cliche marriage advice that people love to say. It rolls off the tongue, it sounds good initially, but then when you really try to implement it into a real marriage, it falls flat.
It's so funny, and you can see from from what I put together, the word platitude just jumped out at me. And I, like you said, it's not to negate that these well-meaning people are not trying to help you and give you really good advice. And some of the myths that you hear, you read it and go, well, that doesn't seem like a bad thing. And it's not necessarily that it is, but it's not always useful. So that I kind of defined it as unuseful. It's overused, and they're just sayings or advice that actually sometimes can cause damage rather than help. And you give 15 different myths, starting with find someone who completes you, which we remember that from the Jerry Maguire movie, right? And it's like,
So romantic, right?
but at the same time, like, you're not a complete person on your own, and you don't come to the relationship as a complete person. That doesn't really, when we pull it apart, we're like, that's not really healthy, right? It's like,
Creates a lot of enmeshment, codependence. Like when you really think about it, you're like, oh no, this is not going to work out.
right. So, but it could be something that people think, oh gosh, but so I think that there's good things in here. And we have, if they love you, they'll know what you want. They can read your mind. The right person won't hurt you. Happy couples don't fight. Don't sweat the small stuff. Never go to bed angry. And then we have the next ones are: marriage is about compromise. Divorce is not an option. Love is all you need. Happy wife, happy life. A good wife keeps her husband satisfied. You'll have time for each other. You'll have time for each other later in life, right?
After the kids are grown, after you've got your career, once you make a certain amount of money. Oh yeah, that's a big one.
If you're not getting along, you pick the wrong person. Whereas, we all know Gottman taught us when I did my couple training, conflict is inevitable. You better learn how to navigate it, because if you're not, are you really engaged, and are you passionate and caring if you never have conflict? So I thought that was a really good one too. Growing apart is a sign it's over. And then happily ever after doesn't exist. So those are the different myths. And I'm going to pull out two of them that we were talking about earlier that I thought were great examples. Did you want to go over anything else about the chapters of the book before we do that?
No, let's chat about specific ones.
Let's jump in. Never go to bed angry. Gosh, everybody out there has to have heard this, right?
Yes, this one is very, very, very well used. And, I cannot tell you how much sleep I lost over this piece of advice, because when I first got married, listen, I come from a long line of divorce, which is, very much part of my mission is to lower the divorce rate and raise marital satisfaction. Because, for me, that's my cycle breaking. And I don't know if you can hear that. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure how to make it stop, but
You're okay.
okay. Yeah. So, when so many people came through the line at my reception, they were like, you're going to be okay. Just don't ever go to bed angry. And I was so determined to do that right. Well, the thing about my husband, he is a great man. He is definitely a morning person. And at a certain point at night, brain just shuts off. Like, you we're not going to discuss anything important after a certain time of night. But I didn't really know this in the beginning. I just knew that we would start picking at each other, or we would, have these disagreements late at night. And I would want to stay up literally late into the night working this out. And my husband, on the other hand, would just roll over and start snoring. And to me, I was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about this marriage. He's going to leave me. He wasn't listening to the advice. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I would just panic would strike me. And he was
What's so funny about that, Monica, is that I think what the intent of the device was: don't carry the anger forward with you, resolve it. And the exact opposite was happening, with what you're talking about. And because again, and it's exhausting what you were going through, right? And it's like, and maybe that night, staying up to 2 or 3 is not a great idea to try and resolve the issue. But I think the intention was probably, don't carry the anger with you. But what you did was, of course, you were like, wait a minute. It's like, how do we resolve this?
Well, on some nights, yeah, I mean, I would just start bawling, crying. I would write in my journal. Sometimes I would wake him up and I would be like, "We're not supposed to go to bed angry." And his response was, "I wasn't angry until you just woke me up." I was like, "What am I supposed to do?"
For sure, for sure.
So, I'll tell you how I learned a better way. And that was after years and years and years of lost sleep. I will tell you, many,
Mm,
many, many sleepless nights. I finally realized that my husband, there's no possible way because of what he experienced growing up that he could possibly understand what was going on inside of me when he
mm,
rolled over and went to sleep. So I
wow.
remember one night, it wasn't like a big argument, but he rolled over to go to sleep and started snoring. And the panic started to rise within me, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep. And so I just kind of like, tink, tink, tink. Can I tell you what's happening to me now as you're, falling asleep? And he's like, sure. So he sits up and I'm like, all of my biggest fears literally become larger than life when I don't get to like have any type of resolution on what just happened. And he's like, okay. And so I start telling him about my experience and my grandpa and my dad, they walked away and, all of these abandonment issues and he's like, oh, and I'm like, my biggest fear is that you don't care about me, you don't love me, and you're just
Mm,
gonna walk away from this. And he's like, oh, he's like, well, I love you and I'm not going anywhere, but right now I just really need to sleep and get a new perspective on this. So I promise we'll talk about it in the morning. And I was like, okay. I'm like, that is so awesome. Can you just maybe say that next time so that, I just have that little piece of reassurance that you actually do love me and you're not going anywhere? And he's like, sure. And so for years, what would happen is, we would get into it. We'd get to some sort of scuffle late at night, and he'd say, I love you. I'm not going anywhere, but now I'm going to go to sleep, and you should too. And I was like, okay. It was just enough for me to be able to settle down my nervous system and be able to actually get some sleep. And here's what happened in the morning.
mm,
This is where all the trust and all the resilience was built because in the morning, he would wake up before me because he's a morning guy and he'd wrap his big, strong arms around me and he'd say, I'm so sorry we fought last night. What do we need to do to make it better? And half the time I'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember. Let's just have a great day. And sometimes I would be like, okay, well, this is what really hurt my feelings. But it was like such a beautiful opportunity for repair, which
mm,
probably we'll get into in the next one. But there's not a lot of effective repair that's going to happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're both absolutely exhausted. So I use the acronym HALTS. I'm not 100% sure where it came from, but if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed, take care of that first.
mm.
Tired is a big one. If you're too tired, take a break, get some sleep, and look at whatever's happening with fresh eyes in the morning. But the key is to actually return to it and repair.
And that's so important. And we see that oftentimes on the show, I talk about Gottman because I studied with the Gottman Institute and they studied thousands of couples for over 30 years. And again, that's what they say. Taking a break can be a good thing, but you have to come back to it and you have to have a plan to come back to it. So all of it fits perfect with the research too, what you discovered inadvertently. So again, back to the slide, what I think is what's important is that why it doesn't work is it's exhausting and you don't have the bandwidth any longer to work on it, right? And so then you make a plan to come back to it after you both have a little bit of a respite, which is a really good idea. And again, these are things that are based in evidence. They're real. They really do work. I know sometimes you think, well, is that okay? The fear is, and your husband, I love how he reassured you, we're going to come back to it. And then he did come back to it and started from what a great space to start with. I'm sorry that we disagreed and we fought. My opinion's still valid. Your opinion's still valid, but I'm sorry we disagreed. And what can we do to make it better? Repair is immediate almost with that. So that's kudos. That's really good. So You can choose the time apart to reflect and cool down. And then, of course, remain curious about your partner, about their equally valid perspective, and believe what they think about it is just as valid as what you think about it.
Yes. And I think that the reason why people get so passionate about this piece of advice is because it does have roots in the Bible, right? They say, don't
Mhm.
let the sun set on your anger. So people get really, really, fixated on this never go to bed angry. But don't let the sun set on your anger is really, to me, it means you don't want to not have a repair conversation. The repair is what's important, and that is the point. Don't let the sun set on your anger means don't let it go unrepaired.
Exactly, unresolved. Because we know those unresolved perpetual issues, oftentimes it's all these little things, but when you look under them, it's the same thing, right?
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
those unrepaired, unresolved issues are what are causing couples ongoing problems. A
mhm.
great example. And so we just talked about one of the myths and how she debunks it. And again, not saying it has no worth at all, but just
Right.
saying here's a better way. And here's another one. Love is all you need, just like the song
Oh, the
says.
Beatles, who are all divorced, by the way.
Right. That does say something.
Yeah,
So we both know love is super important, but it's not going to automatically and guarantee that you're going to have effective and good communication, that you're going to know how to resolve conflict, or that you're going to have lasting happiness just because you love each other. You still have to put work into it.
absolutely, absolutely. And the thing about, I think, love, communication, all of these things that are required to really create, or I like to say co-create
Love it.
happily ever after is like any other skill. If you want to learn a sport, you want to get good at playing an instrument or learn something new, you might have to start as a beginner. You're going to be bad at it before you're good at it. But what makes the difference is, are you really prioritizing this thing? And are you learning the skills required to be better at it? And so, if you want your relationship to succeed, it goes beyond love. It goes to commitment. Am I committed to learning how to do this well? And that means the skills of communication, the skills of repair, the skills of emotional regulation. All of those things are paramount to co-creating your happily ever after love story.
Definitely. I love too how you use the word intentional a lot. And that your intention, that you put intentional effort, that you make time and space for it. And then, of course, people are always like, well, we don't really know how to communicate, but that's a skill building thing. And there's so much great information about how to communicate better, using eye language, doing different things. There is awesome information about there how to do it. But here's the thing that's interesting. I don't know if you found this, Monica, but I find with my couples, they're like, but it feels awkward. It feels weird. But I always remind them what you're doing isn't working. Are we all
Mhm.
in agreement of that? It's really easy to fall back in those patterns, and it's going to feel weird to restate stuff all the time. But restating does this amazing thing. First, it acknowledges it matters what you say to me, and what you say to me is very, very important. And I want to make sure I understood and got it right, that the message I received is what you tried to tell me. There's those two super important um, reasons why it's so important to communicate effectively. So restating shows you I listened, and did I get it right, or do I need to understand further?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, even uh, musicians or professional athletes, they still have coaches, not because they're not proficient at what they're doing, but because it helps to see something from a different perspective, right? A good coach, counselor, or therapist is going to help you see what you cannot see on your own. And it's also, you creating such Oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time with my words tonight.
Sometimes
You're
yeah.
also allowing somebody to influence you. So what happens with couples, like you said, is they get into a certain dynamic and they have a hard time seeing the dynamic. And even couples who are very skilled at communication, oftentimes that dynamic is held into place by losing strategies or adaptive behaviors from childhood, and so it locks that dynamic into place. And so you can have all the skills in the world, but in the moment of conflict, that adaptive child or that, regressed version of yourself isn't going to use the skills. So oftentimes we need some help from a coach or a professional who can help us get to a point where we understand what our adaptations are and what our protective behaviors are so that we can actually access the skills that we've learned.
Definitely. And as we say here, investing in learning how to communicate. Communication is a skill, and conflict resolution actually, Gottman, they have the sound house. The foundation is the friendship or the love, right? And then the house itself is managing conflict, really learning how to navigate through. Because when we're passionate people, I can tell you and your husband are passionate people like my wife and I, and we're different people. You didn't marry yourself. But the beauty of that is you have this whole different, amazing perspective that you never would have had. My wife is such a detail-oriented person. I'm such a big picture person. Sometimes we'll walk out of the room and be like, were we in the same room? But I would never have gotten the detail that sometimes saves us in a circumstance. And she wouldn't have necessarily got the big picture because that's not how we see or view things. So it can be incredibly liberating to have that other view and that other perspective to help guide you to better places if you're open to it and you're curious about it. So even though love is the foundation, skills and habits are the structure that make a relationship really last.
Yes. And like you said, two perspectives always better than one. You're going to see more of the picture with two different perspectives. I love to say about my husband and I, because we are so very, very different. And I get a lot of couples who are like, we're just too different. And I'm like, for my husband and I, it is our differences that creates the passion in our marriage and navigating those differences that creates the intimacy. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of a perspective shift to see those differences as strengths and learn how to respect each other's differences versus just be annoyed with them.
For sure. And the thing is, a couple things that you said earlier that I think are really important. Now, yes, I have been married 40 years, but the thing is do my wife and I drive each other crazy sometimes? Of course. I tell my patients all the time, I teach these skills, I understand them, I know how to use them, but I suck at them sometimes because, like you said, when that inner child takes over or that upset or hurt takes over, a lot of times the skills can go out the window temporarily. And then you come back to your skills. You do your repairs and apologize, and you own what you did, and you move forward. And that's what works. So don't think that like we're so great at this and
Right.
we're not. You learn this through challenges in your own relationship, and that's how we all learn a lot of this.
Oh, yes. Marriage is definitely a learning lab for me. And I'm upset. I tell a lot of stories about how I get it wrong. So, but my saving grace is my repair skills, right? So my husband and I can get very off track very quickly, but we also have the skills of repair. And so that's, just like anyone else, that's what saves us.
Definitely. Owning it and then repairing it. Definitely. And that's the thing. Even like you say, I know there's this tightrope. We have couples who are constantly throwing out there, if you do that again, I'm divorcing you. And so that's always dangling over your head, which is not a good place to function from. But at the same time, if you're like, well, that's off the table, like you say in that chapter, that's not really okay either. What I try to tell my couples to reframe it as, I'm not going anywhere, but this is completely unacceptable and has got to change. And so I think that's really important. But I do think that everybody needs to know there's certain things in a relationship that are never okay. Any kind of interpersonal violence, a lot of things that are not okay. And often we take out on the one we love the most. We give them the worst of ourselves because we've had a rough day or we're upset or we're frustrated, and they bear the brunt of it. And that's not what any of us wants. So you give us a lot of practical tools. We've talked a bit about effective communication, using I statements, checking in really. And I love the way you started that conversation with your husband. I want to talk to you about some of my feelings and how I'm feeling this and the history of why I feel this way. That was a great example of how to do this. Open, honest, respectful dialogues. And then realistic expectations. Our life is not a movie. Movies are not real, and so what you see there is not necessarily going to be realistic. So really looking at conflict's going to be inevitable. How do we have growth and change within the marriage while being flexible and adaptive to that change? And then those intentional connection rituals. And these are, I always tell my couples, every day, sometimes every moment, you make choices for or against love in your relationship.
Mhm.
You get yourself a coffee before you come home. Did you think about your spouse? The most basic thing in the world, going to the bathroom. What did you do with the toilet seat when you were done? Because if your mate is of the opposite sex, and may or may not be, or do they prefer it up or down or whatever? Everything we do affects the other person. So I think those intentional rituals, the choices we make every day. And then, of course, we've talked about debunking and replacing harmful myths, focusing on personal growth, because when I'm my best me, the relationship's better. I love that you bring that out in the book.
Yeah. And the reality is we only have control over ourselves anyway. So we can try, and most of us do try to control our spouse, our children, our pets, and quickly realize, well, some of us quicker than others, that we're spinning our wheels if we're trying to get our partners or our other people in our lives to do anything. Really, what it comes down to is the only person we have any control over is ourselves.
And the truth is, Monica, this is more than enough to do. So stay
Yeah.
in your lane, stay in your lane.
Very correct.
Because this is more than enough to work on every day. And I love too some of the work that's out there about this. Mel Robbins' work on let them, let them so you can let yourself be the best you. But all kinds of good things out there on that. But I love that you bring up really being the best person you can. Then we talked about conflict resolution. We have a whole podcast on gratitude and the power of gratitude and appreciation, and also how that can really live within a relationship. Setting boundaries is really important in all relationships, and self-care and seeking outside support when needed. Just great practical tools in the toolbox to help couples move forward. So I love those things that you include in the book.
Yeah. Well, thank you for reading it. I can tell that you definitely read it and studied it and mined a lot of the really great principles out of it. I appreciate that.
So I know, and so this is the reality of when we do live broadcasts. We have patients, we have couples, we have people we work with. And so I'm moving through a little quickly because I'm being respectful of Monica Tanner's time, because nothing's more important than our families, our friends, and our patients. And she has some other things that are going on, and I want to make sure we get through everything of all the brilliant things she has from her book. But in summary, basically, that personal growth is important. I love how you emphasize that. Marriages require intentionality, one of my favorite words, and effort. Emotions and fatigue can impact conflict. Yes, we come in with emotions. And like you said, is it the best time to talk about it when you're so triggered and so upset? Connection needs constant reinforcement. Regular rituals, appreciation, quality time, and professional support can be helpful. So what of these would you like to end your message and what you'd like to say to our listeners. Such a great book. And then I do have two questions that came up and I will give you those. But so let me give you those first, and then we'll end with what you'd like to share with our listeners as your final thoughts. So this is the first one. I grew up with certain beliefs about what a good marriage should look like. And I think some of them are hurting my relationship now. How do you start unlearning those messages without feeling like you're doing something wrong? I thought that was a good question.
It's a great, great, great question. I often go back to a book that I really appreciate by Emily Nagoski. It's called Come As You Are. And what she's talking about sex and intimacy, but you can really apply this to any beliefs in your marriage. She refers to them as a garden. So when you're young, you don't have any control over what's being planted in your garden. That's up to your caregivers, your teachers, the people, who are there to help raise you. But when you become an adult, and especially when you get into a long-term committed relationship, it becomes your responsibility now to tend to that garden. So we have to really go through and look at what's growing in this garden. Are they seeds that are nourishing, or are they weeds? And it becomes our responsibility now to pull out the weeds. Sometimes we have to pull out everything and rototill that entire garden and then replant the things that will actually feed our relationship and be nourishing to us. And so it's really important, you're not doing anything wrong. You're operating on the seeds that were planted for you before you had anything to say about it. So now, as an adult, it's your responsibility to go through and, is this serving my relationship? Is this nourishing? If not, it's got to go. And you've got to figure out what will. And those are the beliefs, those are the teachings, those are, really all of the things that made you who you are. So important. But now we've got to go through, and how do we really strengthen our relationship? What's important now?
Definitely. I love the garden metaphor. And Emily Nagoski is a neurobiologist and is a colleague of mine from ASECT. And she wrote that amazing book, Come As You Are, and a great resource. And again, all science-based and all things that really are true. But I love that garden metaphor. Nurture your garden, but it's your garden now.
Yes.
You inherited a garden for sure. And it's got sometimes maybe even these 15 myths that may not be serving you anymore, and there may be wonderful things that serve you in the garden, but you decide what stays and what goes and nurture it. So I love that metaphor.
Very well said.
Second question, if a couple feels stuck and what they've been doing isn't working, what's one small practical shift they can make that actually leads to meaningful change?
Okay. This is a great question. I think first and foremost, the shift that you can make is to default to curiosity. So the reality is everything that your partner does or says, even if you don't understand it or you hate it or you just think like, why is this person the way that they are? It always makes sense if you're willing to dig in deep enough. And instead of just making judgments on your partner and how they do things and how they think about things and how they're different than you, if you will default to curiosity, ask more questions. So here's an example. I have a client and he's like, I have a really hard time talking to my spouse about things when she tries to tell me that a clearly blue ball is orange. He's like, I just shut down. I can't listen to her anymore because it makes no sense. And I'm like, here's what your job, if your wife comes and tells you that a ball is orange and you see it as blue, your job is to become a detective. Figure out how she's seeing that ball as orange, because what if the ball is blue on one side and orange on the other? And neither of you can see each other's sides until you start asking the right questions and recognize that you're both actually right. The ball can be two different colors. And so this is one of the most important skills that you don't need a lot of training to start implementing, is just start asking questions. Figure out why the way your partner thinks or behaves or see things makes sense to them. That is going to change everything for you.
Definitely. And think how desperately you want your partner to understand you. Do you as desperately want to understand them? And we call that in integrative behavioral couple therapy, we call it empathetic joining. Where does it come from? And the curiosity comes from, I love how you naturally talked about, this is why I feel this way. What happened with your father? What happened with my family? Once you unpack it, you go, of course you feel that way. Of course you see it as orange because that is the glasses you have on that turn it to that orange color. You have so that's the paradigm that you're looking through. So I think that's really, really valuable, good information. Well, lastly, I'd just like to end with, first off, oh my gosh, thank you so much for your book and for sharing your expertise. Lots of good nuggets, lots of good research-based information in there. I really respect the work you do as a relationship coach. And what final words would you like to tell our listeners? And then I will go to the rest of the things as we close out.
Amazing. Amazing. I think what I would say is what we call it in RLT, what we just talked about is we use the phrase, learn to have compassionate curiosity for your partner's subjective reality. Realize that in relationship, there are two different realities. So a lot of couples get into objectivity battles, meaning this is the right way to see it. This is the right way to see it. When really you're going to get a lot farther and a lot more intimate. I know this podcast is called Talking About Sex and Intimacy. I promise you're going to get closer intimately, and definitely your sex life will improve if you start to have compassionate curiosity for your partner's subjective reality. And I'll just leave it at that.
Perfect. Gosh, it's been such a treat to have you on. And I know you got so many things going on with your patients in your life right now. So my prayer for you is that you just are blessed in every way with all the things you're dealing with. And thank you for taking time out of your crazy day to spend with us and share this incredible expertise with our listeners. Have a wonderful evening. I'll go on with the show, but thank you so much. All right. So as we do, and we've come to that place in the podcast where we're going to do our closing centering exercise. So as we close today's episode, I'd just like to offer a brief moment of pause and reflection. If you're able, take a slow, steady breath in and gently exhale. Bring to mind one piece of relationship advice you've carried with you. One piece of relationship advice you maybe carried with you. Something you've believed you should do in the relationship. Some piece of a relationship advice you're carrying with you, good or bad, whatever it is, just notice how it feels in your body. Does it create pressure? Does it create guilt or disconnection? Now, without judgment, ask yourself, is this actually helping me and my partner feel closer? This relationship advice? Is it actually helping me and my partner feel closer? Take another breath in. And as you exhale, imagine giving yourself permission to let go of advice that doesn't serve you or no longer serves you. Inhale and release anything that no longer serves you. Now instead, bring your attention to one small, meaningful way you can show up with intention in your relationship, perhaps listening more openly, expressing appreciation or gratitude, or being more present. Let that intention settle in. Take one more breath in and exhale. And when you're ready, return to your day, grounded in the understanding that healthy relationships aren't built on perfect advice. There is no such thing as perfect advice, but on thoughtful, authentic connection. Let that settle in. Gently open your eyes if you've closed them. Readjust to the room. Okay, Vic, what's coming up next week on Dr. Jeff Talks about sex and intimacy?
In this uplifting and transformative episode of Dr. Jeff Talks about sex and intimacy, Dr. Jeff and co-host Dr. Susan Kellogg-Spad are joined by Lena El-Khatib, a sex therapist, educator, and expert in cultivating erotic well-being. Lena will explore the profound impact of play on sexual connection, desire, and relational intimacy. People often approach sexual challenges with a problem-focused, analytical mindset, trying to figure out desire, performance, or communication with logic alone. But the erotic self doesn't live in the head. It lives in sensation, curiosity, imagination, and embodied presence. Lena shows us why play is one of the most underestimated tools for shifting out of intellectualizing and into authentic erotic exploration. Join us on May 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
Vic, you kill me. Yeah, and that lines us up because we are going to be talking about kink. So that was a good one, Vic. Anyway, all right. So next week, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about play. Some of that may include that, but it's going to be a great episode. I hope you'll join us. We're really excited about it because play is so underestimated, and we forget about play. When we're little, we naturally play, but when we're older, we forget how important play is in our relationship and in our lives. So I'm excited about the episode. Today has been really just chock full of really good information and tools to help you intentionally put effort into your miraculous, beautiful relationship. I can't think of anything better to invest in than your personal growth, which we've talked about, and your loving relationships. Please know that you are so deserving of love and belonging, and yourself and your relationship is worth your time and attention. So just as Emily Nagowski says, let your garden grow. Think of your relationships and your love and your life as a garden. Nurture it and bring it to full bloom. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.
As Dr. Jeff talks about sex